Rusty,
Here.
Rich,
Here.
Ron,
Here.
David,
Here.
Michelle, here. Harvey,
Here.
thank you. Kim,
Here.
and Teresa's here, thank you. David, will you do the confession?
Happy to. Please bow our heads. Gracious Heavenly Father, we really appreciate all the wonderful weather we have here in Florida and all the great people in Marion County, and especially the people involved in the Marion County Hospital District, our staff. We know they work so hard to push our mission forward. Hope you can help the citizens of this county open their eyes and their ears to the problems of health that we have, that they may help pull the load. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, David. Do we have any public comments? Hearing none, we will move on. David has a couple of things that he'd like to say. Oh, no, excuse me. We'll save that till after we approve the minutes. So if everyone has reviewed the minutes from the previous meetings,
I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes as they are.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes passed. David.
Um,
Microphone, make sure you have everything.
I would just like to mention that this coming Monday, April 1st, will be the 10-year anniversary from when we closed the deal with CHS. And I just want to bring this to our attention, that if you think about what we've done in 10 years, it really is quite amazing to me. This has been really an interesting experience for me. Even if we just somehow got down the field and scored a couple of first downs, but I think we put a few balls in the end zone. And I want to thank the staff, for their work, the vision of the board. We've certainly got, the work that we are still facing is almost sometimes seems like a snow bank in front of us that we just would never plow through. But look at what we've done behind us, and it's really amazing. And there's so many things in this county that we have been a part of that have been improved. I believe some of it's dramatic. And we're going to get to this in a few minutes. We have $100 million more money than we started off with, which is truly amazing. And we've had some board members, Rich, I especially appreciate your vision and work on that we've been able to accomplish all that we have, and we still own the golden goose. So, my thanks to everybody that's been involved and our staff that continues to work so hard on this mission. Thanks.
Thank you, David.
Here, today.
That's right. All right, first thing we're going to move around on the agenda is we're going to move finance up.
If I could, I would like to, section within the operations agenda was the presentation of the financial statement audit by Purvis Gray. Is it okay if we have them provide their presentations?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes,
I'd like to introduce Allison and Lori from Purvis Gray. They've been the audit firm, independent audit firm for the Marion County Hospital District for several years, maybe the whole 10 years.
I was going to say, since that period that was just mentioned, we've been working with you all on the audit.
So in today's environment, in the last few years since we've been engaged, we prepare the financial statements. So any questions you might have about the annual financial statement, those are ours. We prepare those, and it's their responsibility to issue an opinion on those financial statements in accordance with U.S. GAAP and accounting with governmental accounting standards. So during their presentation, if you have any questions about their audit opinion, they're probably the best answer for that. Anything about the financial statements, you can look at. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Allison.
Okay. Well, good evening. Thank you all for having us. Again, my name is Allison Stone. I'm the director on your audit engagement, and this is Lori Walker. She's the supervisor on your audit engagement, and I do believe you have been working on this audit since inception. So we're happy to be here. Tim Westgate is the partner. Normally here with us tonight, we have a prior commitment, but sends his well wishes. So I just wanted to let you know we're going to go through the audit results. I'm not going to page by page. I believe it is in front of you and perhaps was in your packet beforehand. I know Deborah and Kurt have spent a lot of time looking at it. Again, Matt did write up the financial statements and the notes, so I think that they're pretty familiar with it. Your audit does meet the requirements of the rules of the Auditor General and Florida statutes. Our opinion, which if you do want to look, is on page 1 of this document, and we have issued an unmodified or a clean opinion on the financial statements, which is the highest level of assurance that you can have on an audit. So again, a good audit here. In addition, the audit is in compliance with the Yellow Book or the governmental audit requirements, and we have issued a report on internal control and over compliance. Happy to say we had no issues, no findings related to internal control or compliance, so that's all just standard language in that report. We did also review the district's compliance with Florida statutes 218-415, which ensures that your investment policy is in line with Florida statutes. Happy to say no issues to report in that letter or that report as well. The last report in the document is the Auditor General or the management letter. And if we had any issues or concerns or any financial condition concerns or any financial management recommendations that would be in there, happy to say we had none of that, no findings or issues there. So that completes the bulk of our reports. It's in the bound document. Every year we do include this separate letter, which probably is on the top of your packet. This is addressed to you, the Board of the Trustees. And it's just communication that we give every year regarding any new accounting standards that might have been implemented or any future ones that may impact the district. Also significant estimates such as your fair value, obviously, of your investments is a big one, depreciation and so forth. If we had any issues during the audit, any problems completing the audit or disagreements with management, they would be in here. We didn't have any of those things, or any significant audit adjustments, and we did not have any audit adjustments. So again, this is basically standard language, just letting you know some of the things that we touched on in the audit and some of the main estimates and so forth. So that's, in summary, your audit results. We do want to make sure that we thank Deborah and Kurt and Matt and the Crippen team for all of their help. We ask for a lot of information, a lot of documentation and schedules, and they are quick to respond and very helpful, and I think it's a great relationship, and we really appreciate it. So if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions?
No. I think it's a great reflection on Crippen,
Absolutely.
they have no variances, and on management too, that the controls are in place, so kudos to all you guys. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, trustees, and then after acceptance, I will do all the necessary state filings with the reports.
So do we need a motion or just an acceptance?
I move for acceptance.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Would you like to continue with the
Yes,
finance?
please.
Okay, excellent. Included in the packet on pages, starting on page 53 through the remainder of the packet are the February 2024 financial statements of the Marion County Hospital District. These are included in your packet, so if you have any questions, let me know. The key highlights that we always want to make sure are communicated to the trustees is in relation to the investments. They're the most significant part of the balance sheet and the income statement, and for the month of February, there was like $5 or $6 million in appreciation of those investments, so a really significant month, $5.5 million to be exact. And with regard to spending and the expenditures of the hospital district, they remain in line with the prior approved and amended budget.
Thank you.
Any questions? We need a motion to approve the financials as presented.
So moved.
We have a first, we have a second. All in favor?
Thank you.
Matt, do you have anything else? Okay, thank you very much. So we'll go back up top. Do we want to finish with operations or go into investments?
No, I'm waiting for, let's see if Nathan comes through. If not, we'll go after.
Okay, we'll give them a few seconds.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to move into
Here we go.
investments.
let me just get my screen to share. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and start with our market commentary. So for the month of February, the theme for now remains optimism, and we saw in the markets there was increased risk appetite, as it's pretty much well understood and expected that rates have peaked and there's really nowhere for them to go but down at this point. The question is really when and by how much. And that translated into equity markets continuing on their positive trajectory during the month of February. We saw that U.S. markets were up about 5%, and in a reversal from last month, large caps underperformed small caps. When we look abroad, emerging markets led developed international markets, and core bonds posted another loss as treasury yields continued to rise. Right. So I'm going to move to slide. Okay, here we have the index detail like we always provide, just in case you wanted to see a specific asset class and how it's performed on the different periods. But I'll land again on slide 4, where we're gonna. Can you see my screen clearly? Is there something obstructing?
No.
You can see.
Okay, great. I was getting a notification. So yeah, in terms of asset allocation, you can see that the aggregate positioning at the total composite level is mostly in line with what will shortly become the former policy targets. As of March 31st, as a reminder, the portfolio transition for each asset class will begin, and you'll see that we'll switch to an interim benchmark from that point on until the third quarter of 2026, when we expect the transition to be complete. And as a slight preview to our in-person meeting next month, which we're very much looking forward to, we're going to review the plan in terms of where we were 6 months ago when we started this work and where we're going ultimately. And we'll have each of the managers give a performance overview relative to their benchmark over that time period. And then they'll also provide details for the roadmap and the time frame to be in compliance with the new strategic asset allocation that we've been talking about. I want to move to slide 6 really quickly to double click on Crescent's positioning. You'll note that over here, Crescent's fixed income composite is underweight to that minimum policy range that we discussed, and that again is due to February performance. As I mentioned previously, core fixed income managers were down across the board for the month. Since then, they've rebalanced and they've come back into compliance, but this was something that I wanted to point out because you might expect to see some of these fluctuations along the way at the margins as they transition to the new slightly lower strategic policy allocation to fixed income. The last slide I want to touch on before I pass it over to Nathan is just this corpus table, sanity check of where we are in terms of market value. If you look at the very last value in that column, February 2024, all of the changes that we've discussed brings the total portfolio market value to that $296.5 million. And we can see in terms of our goal of maintaining or even exceeding the corpus and surpassing inflation, happy to see that we've been able to do that along the way. And I'll turn it over to Nathan to get more into the performance detail.
All right, thank you very much, Evie. If you could turn to slide 9. So it's always nice doing attribution when performance has been positive. So starting in the top left-hand corner of this slide, the total fund shown by the dark blue bar returned 2.14% over the month versus the benchmark return in light blue of 1.84. So it was actual aggregate outperformance of almost 0.3%. And in terms of where that came from, turning to the top right-hand side of this slide, you can see that the lion's share really was manager value add. And then very specifically within manager value add, which were the composites that collectively Truist, Crescent, and Greystone were able to add value. you can see in the bottom right-hand side, it was non-US equities, fixed income, and liquid alternatives or more hedge fund-oriented strategies. So a very positive month for the foundation as a whole. And then if we go through each provider one by one, just turning to Truist on slide 10, thanks Evie. They actually essentially matched that exact performance. So 30 basis points or 0.3% ahead of the benchmark over the month. The majority of that coming from manager value add, and very specifically, almost all of that really within fixed income. Now, you will note that a number of your managers, including Truist, not only have a standalone allocation to cash as a 5% strategic benchmark weight, but within fixed income, they actually have the flexibility to add cash within there. So Truist, somewhat interestingly, they are underweight cash, that 5% standalone allocation, but within fixed income, they actually have almost a third of their money there is essentially in cash. And given that, as Evie said, yields rose over the month, so asset values fell for interest rate duration sensitive assets, being in cash really added to performance. So that was really the main kind of contributor for them over the month as a whole. Another thing that helps them, you can see within asset allocation in dark green in the middle at the bottom, was being overweight to US equities. So Truist has flipped quite considerably from last year from being underweight now to being overweight US equities, and over the month of February that was a contributor to performance. If we move to Crest on slide 11, Crest essentially continued to be your best performing manager in the short run. So anywhere up to kind of a 1 year period, they've really been the best performing manager, and February was no different. So returns of 2.63% or almost 78 basis points above the benchmark. Almost all of that coming from manager value add there on the top right hand side in orange. And within that, the lion's share actually coming from liquid alternatives. So some of you will note that Crescent has a kind of mixture of hedge fund strategies and almost private credit type strategies within this bucket. It was actually the hedge fund strategies, the SEG Partners, the BlackRock Strategic Hedge, both of which performed really strongly over the month. SEC up over 9%, BlackRock up almost 7%. So strong outperformance over that individual composite, which really helped them. On top of that, they've been selecting the right managers in non-US equity. So a recent addition to the portfolio, RBC did really well, as did GQG. So there's 13 basis points of value added there. And then finally within fixed income, kind of a similar story to Truist, but not quite as aggressive in their cash allocation within fixed income. But they did have a 3.5% allocation within fixed income of cash on top of what they hold exclusively within cash. So all of those added to performance. And then from an allocation perspective, you can see they're underweight to fixed income and marginal underweight, underweight to fixed income and underweight to cash were both contributing to performance over the month. And then finally wrapping things up with Greystone. So Greystone was the laggard over the month. I would note, as I feel like I continue to on most months, that we have to separate out for Greystone what they can control and what they can't control. So what they can control is really the asset allocation and manager selection within the traditional asset classes. So equities, fixed income and cash essentially. And over the month you can see that they lagged the benchmark by 14 basis points. Half of that came from manager value add, and really that's the area that we had a scorecard up would probably be penalising Greystone for. They continue to be, I would say, more broadly diversified within US equities versus the benchmark. So the benchmark is the S&P 500 up to the end of this month, and they've had a number of value positions, value managers, Boston Partners, Columbia, as well as some sort of small cap value-oriented strategies, and those all detracted from performance over the month. The other half of performance, which I'm not really counting against them, is within asset allocation. So you can see there, actually, if we turn to the dark grey on the bottom left-hand side, they have no holdings within liquid alternatives. They're 10% underweight their strategic benchmark. but on the flip side, they're almost 90% overweight their liquid alternatives benchmark, and just essentially running a 0% return in that bucket versus in an upward, public equity environment, they will always lag. So I'm not holding that against them, but that was half of the reason for their underperformance. And then wrapping up, or kind of looking at the more longer term, medium and longer term performance on 13, I think what's nice to see is after, including February, over the 2024, the first couple of months, Marion County is ahead of its benchmark, so 2.58 versus 2.34. Over the fiscal year to date and 1 year numbers, you are behind, but the absolute numbers are very, very strong. So over the fiscal year to date, it's up, the portfolio is up 10.35%, and over the last 12 months, it's up almost 13%. There is obviously some kind of lagging of the benchmark. You can see that's predominantly coming from US equities, illiquid alternatives, so private markets, private capital, and a much smaller amount from cash. And then if we look at Truist on the next slide, it's nice to see some sort of short-term positive relative performance for Truist. I would note that the median and long-term track record continues to be challenged, down about 2% per annum, versus the benchmark over the 3 and 5 year periods. And again, that's coming from similar areas as we've just spoken about, right? So US equity manager selection. Surprisingly, I guess within private equity as well, we would have expected, given that they're outsourcing this to Harbourvest, a private equity fund of funds, performance to be a bit stronger than that actually has been. And those have been the two main detractors from relative performance over the longer term. Crescent on the next slide has really been the kind of standout performer, and you can see, at the top there, the value add versus the Crescent total fund policy has been positive all the way through to the 1 year number. By a solid 1.2% over the last 1 year. So really, really strong, relative performance over that period. The longer term does lag, but by a considerable amount less than it does for Truist. And some of the areas of our performance we've noted before, right? But international equity, liquid alternatives in particular, has been really significant for them over the last 1, 3, and 5 years, and to a lesser extent, fixed income. And then finally, wrapping up with Greystone on slide 16, they're almost the opposite of Truist and Crescent in that their short-term numbers look really bad. They're the worst performers over the last year. Almost all of that, or I'd say kind of half of that's probably US equities, 6 percentage points, 6.2% behind benchmark, and the other half is, their private market positions. But that was the legacy deck of cards that they got dealt that, we can't change in the short term. However, on the flip side, they're the only manager, when you look back to their specific inception number, that's actually ahead of benchmark. So it's a kind of tale of two sides there.
Any questions? I don't think so.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. So the other presentation that we have, thanks, Evie, perfect, on slide 2, is, and I guess before I jump into this, what we're trying to do here, if you think about the management of the foundational assets, we are tasking Truist, Crescent, and Greystone with beating the strategic benchmark that we set. But obviously the trustees, in conjunction and partnership with Wilshire, are setting that strategic benchmark on the expectation that the benchmark alone will achieve the return that we desire over the long term within the risk constraints that we're working in as set out within the IPS. And so there was a question that came up last time to say, okay, it's good that we are holding the OCIO managers accountable on a month-by-month basis, but for us as trustees and you, Wilshire, for the strategic benchmark, how do we know that the recent decision we made to move to a new benchmark is actually contributing to performance? And so that's really what we're showing in this presentation. I would note that we haven't even moved. It's going to be April 1 where we actually officially move to the new benchmark. But in terms of how we track this, essentially what we're proposing is, and it may be clearer if we move on to slide 3, is we essentially show a comparison of what we call a growth of a dollar, growth of $100 chart. So just to explain this chart conceptually, what this is showing is in September 30, 2022, it's about 18 months ago now, if you had put $100 in, Marion County Hospital District's strategic benchmark portfolio, what would it be worth today? And you can see it's, just north of $120. So pretty strong performance. That's obviously all based on the existing strategic allocation that's about to change effective 4/1. On the next slide, really this is how we propose kind of measuring this, is we'd say, okay, that's the previous benchmark's performance. If we actually then add on this light blue line and then effective, and this is hypothetical because as I said, we've not even moved to the new benchmark weights, but let's say we move to the new benchmark weights in October 1 last year. This is how, that $100 moving from one benchmark to another would have performed relative to just staying as it was. And you can see over the last 5 months that that's actually been a marginal detractor from performance just because equity markets have done really well and we're actually reducing the allocation to equity markets. But the difference between the two is really, I guess, the way that we're going to provide accountability and look at strategically over the long term whether or not this is added to performance. One point to note here is, there's going to be, when we set the new benchmark weights, we did this using 10-year risk and return assumptions. So on a month-by-month basis, there's actually going to be a reasonable amount of noise that comes in, just given market sentiment and market technical factors, not just fundamentals. And so in terms of the frequency with which we review this, we think it's appropriate to probably bring this back to you at the in-person meeting in October, looking at data through September, and after that, probably on an annual basis, would be our recommended frequency.
So if I could ask a question regarding that chart. So what would be a measure of success in this chart?
That ain't it. That ain't it.
But yeah, I realize that, that's what I'm saying, but over what period of time and how do we measure success?
Yeah, so I think the way we're going to ultimately, it's going to be, is the blue, there's 2 points to this, 2 sides to this. One is the blue line going to be above the dark, light blue line above the dark blue line? And then the second one is, has it achieved that with equal or less risk, so less volatility than the dark blue line? Because that's really what we focused on when we set the new investment strategy. It is not just return in and of itself, but the risk we're accepting to try and target that return. Over what time horizon as well, I think it's realistically, we're not going to be able to have a kind of clear indication. Probably, this is more of a 3-5 year measure. So we're going to measure on a cumulative basis. But if we think about particularly the new allocations to private capital, such as private credit, a number of those take years to build up. And so we are wary about not judging them, before they've had their true impact in the portfolio.
Yeah, certainly 3 months is absolutely no way long enough. I don't know if 5 years is as realistic also. But when you guys did this theoretical change, the way it came out was that the risk was less and the return was more, right?
Correct.
And because of the cash calls that we need on a yearly basis, volatility is not our enemy, right? Risk is an enemy, but volatility is, we don't mind getting paid for volatility because our cash calls is 5%. So we can absorb some volatility in return for return. So I'm not saying this is wrong by a whole lot because the numbers you gave us 3 months ago solely implied that the risk was lower and the return was higher. So, and you may very well be right. It would be silly to think, we look at 3 months and say, oh my gosh, this is bad. But personally, I don't think the headline risk of volatility should take over the absolute returns in the long run, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think, it's downside volatility really that we care about. And when we're taking money out of the portfolio in an environment after markets have fallen, that's really what we're cautious about. And that's why, when we run this and when we ran it, we didn't just focus on one number. We had to, what is the downside risk of the portfolio? What is the probability of losing money? What is the probability of achieving this target? So it's always going to be, different lenses that we have to put on to view portfolio risk.
I have a question. I do really like this graph, actually. This is one of the things I wanted to see asset allocations, it makes a difference. But to this, as a non-financial person, I'd like to see also the standard benchmark as a comparison to what would be asset allocation we already have.
That's a dark blue line.
That's
No,
a
but
dark-
this is the allocation based on the new strategy.
The new strategy. The old one. So the old one is if you put out money invested in the old strategy.
Yeah, I got it. So I want the standard benchmark is just what the market does, S&P 500 or something.
So I thought what you had asked for. on
This
that
is fine. I'm just asking
We would add another bar.
another layer to that so that I have one more competitive.
Another graph.
Okay. Did you hear him, Nathan?
I'm not sure I completely understood. So, Dr. Ram, was it that you want to see the longer time track record with both benchmarks side by side?
This is actually fine. Maybe you can explain it better.
I think what he's asking for is we could add another graph in there that would just be the benchmark, market benchmarks.
Market benchmark.
If there's
Okay, these are just benchmark numbers. So what we're doing here is we're stripping out all of the overweight, underweight decisions of the managers, all of the active fund selection decisions of the managers. So for example, the dark blue line here, this is tracking 35% S&P 500, 10% MSCI ACWI ex-US, 35% US Ag, etc., etc. It's the old strategic benchmark. The light blue line is tracking exactly the same thing until the point when we change the benchmark, which hasn't actually happened yet, but we've just shown it here for illustrative purposes.
Okay, I got it.
So back on the time horizon that we want to measure, that we talked about up to 5 years, which I think Rich thought that was, and I would agree that's probably too long, but do we want to set what that would look like and what time period we're going to measure this over so we can see how we define success? I know that's a moving target a little bit, but is 1 year adequate?
I think he said that that's what they would recommend, bringing this back for us to look at
Okay.
at 12 months. But knowing that some of these portfolios would not be probably seeded until in the 5-year mark, is that how I understood it?
That's what he said.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. So if you go into the final slide, on slide 5, please. This just sets it out. So I'm sorry that there are a million numbers on this slide, but if we just focus on the dates and dark blue and the kind of top ribbon, this is going to take us, through 2026 probably to be fully in target. And so, I think it's reasonable, at that October meeting in 2026, when we're sat here and we've been through this glide path to the new target, and we could see we would have had 2.5 years of data. I would say that's probably a reasonable point in time to say, has this worked? Has it achieved our objectives?
Okay.
Comments, questions, concerns? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Kind of along with Rusty's question about how we measure success. We've had some discussions in the past about, well, if there's some way to capture most of the upside and limit ourselves to not capturing all the downside. But how do you really, get that quantified? So we captured 90% of the upside, only 75% of the downside, therefore, that's what we wanted. That's
Exactly.
That's sort of what I'm wanting to hear also. Are we moving in that direction? So in this package, when you have these type graphs right here that show, this is just for the past month, that, shows, this particular one, the big orange bar there, manager value added, looks pretty good. Except,
Greystone.
Greystone didn't look so good. When you go to the pages after that, that breaks it down, brought my glasses this time, hopefully I can figure this out what I'm thinking about. The first one on page 36 is the composite. So starting on page 37 is, the first one is truest. So if you go down under just, for instance, U.S. equities, and you go over for 1 year, equities were at 30.45%, and they didn't produce but 22.41, so they were a negative 8%. All right, everybody sees that.
Yep.
Same, similar in ways with the pages right after that for Crescent and Greystone, although for the U.S. equities market, no doubt that Truist was the worst performer over the past 1 year. And I do remember that a year ago, I think there were some dark clouds and Truist was loaded up a little bit more on the fixed income or something. There was some reasoning they had. But my question is, at what point do we throw a flag on the field and say something, I think we should have some sort of guidelines or some way to trigger us to ask questions. Hey, is this in line with what Wilshire thinks is okay or not?
Well, I don't think that you couldn't ask that question any time.
Oh, you can ask the question. I'm not afraid to ask that question. I don't know if I'm asking a reasonable question. I don't know what really is reasonable.
I understand what you're saying. I would say that there's a couple things seems with Truist. For instance, Mike doesn't seem as engaged as he used to be. I don't think he's made the last half dozen meetings or something. It's been kind of so it may be time just to poke him a little bit and say, you guys understand what you're doing and you're not performing too well.
Well, and to that note, that was brought up to Wilshire about his attendance. So I think that he is coming next month in April.
Yeah, his performance just has to match his attendance. Yeah, I mean, I just think sometimes these guys need to be,
Engaged?
yeah, a little more engaged. And that's a legitimate point. As far as timing goes, they really shun less than a year by a lot, and that's very, very reasonable because it takes some time to implement the thesis and get it all done. But when you start getting down to 4 or 5 years, I think that's silly, actually.
Yeah, well, the ship's gone.
Right. So the difference between having, so like when he was saying, we don't really need to look at this for 2.5 years, I would say if this is where we were, and this thing keeps going like this, I don't think we need to wait 2.5 years.
Right.
Correct.
Right, I mean, if they're like this and it's really close, okay, we probably should. But I think that the delta between them is probably a little more important than the time.
Yes.
Wilshire gives us this information, but if it's far deviation from what's expected, will they advise us to call Truist and tell them what to do, or they do it themselves? I mean, how does it holistically
I
happen?
think that they would bring that up to us.
They cannot directly tell them what to do.
They can advise them or ask questions.
I think they can hold them accountable.
Are they doing them now?
They should be. I think
Are they
that's
doing them now, or am I?
Yes, I believe that they are. They're addressing their positions and where, to each of
Will
them.
they at some point tell us this, that we'll have to dump this and get a new one?
Well, we've been doing that, right? I mean.
Right, we did that.
we've got-
I know we did it before.
Yeah,
I like them to advise us what to do.
Yeah,
And that's part of their role.
that's a big part of it. Well, I think there's like an interaction between Teresa and them, and then the other ones are supposed to be delivering the message.
That's correct.
Yeah, they're managing the managers.
That's right. We're not.
We're
Not
not.
correct.
Not correct.
Not correct.
But you manage the managers of the managers.
Correct. David, does that address your question? No?
Well, you know, I feel a lot more comfortable coming to these meetings when we got a guy like Rich and Rusty, I think, has a better handle on this than I do. I'm just wondering, just in general, I mean, I've been here long enough now that I've seen us get rid of, Goldman Sachs and Massey Quick. So I know at some point we go, wait a minute, you know, but I'm just kind of curious, well, how, and I like Rich's explanation of kind of the graph, if they're moving in the wrong direction for too long, you go, wait a minute.
Right.
So, but how do you really, for an average board person that comes on, you know, fairly new to grasp all this and understand why are we, or should we, call somebody in on the carpet and say to Wilshire, wait a minute, can you call these dudes up and ask them what's going on here?
We could set some triggers, says that the delta is X, whatever that delta is, then that would trigger, and that would,
Bingo, exactly.
that would require some action to take place.
Yes. That's sort of what I'm looking, or thinking anyway, but
So why don't I talk to Nathan and then follow back up with the board? With recommendation.
I think in technical terms, he wants Nathan to be more of a hard ass.
Okay, let me write that down.
Can you speak into the mic, please?
And we do not know that he is not.
That's right,
We
absolutely,
do not know that he
100%.
is not. He has just been extremely professional with us. So, go back to operations. All right, so we took care of Purpose and Grace, so now we're, next item, Mike.
The only thing for this gray, Rusty, or actually, you might want to do this, is accept the audit. We don't approve the audit, but we accept the audit, that it was presented to us and we accept it.
Okay, so we need to accept the
Well-
audit, right?
Yep.
And I thought that we made a motion in second,
I
and
thought we did
Did
it.
we?
Yes,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yes.
Yeah, okay, I missed it, I'm sorry.
that's all right.
I was focused in.
That's okay. All right, so Rusty.
Madam Chair, I think we discussed at the last trustee meeting that we're starting bringing to the board some of our insurance information. So in front of you, you should have in your package, it was on page 14. This is a list of all of our different insurance carriers and the type of insurance we have, as well as the amounts of coverage. So I think it's imperative that the trustees review that, and at some point in time, either this meeting or next meeting, sometime we need to acknowledge as the trustees our insurance. If you want any more clarification on these different coverages, now is the time, or sometime, to speak up and ask Kirk or Deborah what those questions be regarding our insurance coverages.
You looked at all these coverages.
I have not looked at them.
Oh,
I would just ask, could you make it bigger so I can see it?
Yeah, what I asked Deborah Kirk was to give us a list of all the different insurance with the
Okay.
coverage amounts. And this, I will do that, but this is,
Right.
also want your input, also if you have any questions on these different insurance and the agents, as well as the coverage amounts.
well, kind of again, are we looking for anything in particular? Like, are we worried about being overcovered or undercovered or?
No, really, I just think it's responsibility of this body here to have an understanding of what our coverage is. I mean, we can hold them accountable, but we need to know what kind of insurance we have.
Right.
And if you see something there that sparks your interest or you have a question on, because if something was to happen, we didn't have insurance, it's too late.
Right.
And that's on us.
Very fair.
I'm also curious about what the premiums have been running for the past few years and what the, and who we're using for our insurance, local agent or whoever it is.
Hub International in Gainesville.
Right.
That's who we use as our broker, and I can get you, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I certainly will get you all of
I mean, I'll tell you, the insurance market right now is a little
Do
bit
we
shocking.
bid it out, John? I mean, do we get 3 bids every time for renewals?
The agent bids it out to individual organizations.
It's a broker, right?
It's a
Right, the
broker.
broker, and he bids it out.
Okay.
And that's all I have. Next one operation, and I will disclose this time that, I'm going to recuse myself from the next action, the next conversation about the College Central Florida naming rights. I'm a trustee for the College of Florida, and if this was to pass, there would be a potential windfall to the college. So I'm going to refrain from comments as well. Accuse
Okay,
myself.
so Carson, you
So,
take
yes, I'll take this over. So, we had a request both from the College of Central Florida and also from Advent Health. Currently, when we invested in the nursing facility at the College of Central Florida, we put into our MOU that we retain the naming rights. And we currently have the naming rights. Advent Health would like to have the naming rights, and as part of that, the College of Central Florida would receive from Advent Health at least 20% of the cost of the building. So that would amount to approximately $4 million that the College of Central Florida would receive for their nursing and technical division. So if we relinquish that, we would have to have a modified MOU. We would retain different counsel than we currently have now, since Robert Batzel works for both organizations. So we would find another attorney that we've identified, at least one potential. If the board wanted to consider relinquishing the naming rights, so the College of Central Florida could have an endowment of about $4 million for the name.
And just for the record, I want to state, just so it's out there from a member of Gooding and Batzel, the law firm, to the extent that legal counsel is required to either draft the contract, participate in negotiations, formulate a legal opinion, or undertake any legal duties, both myself, Robert Batzel, and Gooding and Batzel as a law firm are going to recuse ourselves from any involvement because both are our clients and we have a conflict of interest.
You looking for comments?
Yes.
Did we go to the other guys and ask them what they wanted?
No.
Would that be a bad thing to do? You know, in other words, a guy wants to buy a truck and the first guy that offers it, you pay him. Maybe somebody else wants to pay more for the naming rights. I don't know.
This is a request from the college.
Could you speak into the microphone, because we're trying to record and we can't.
Yes.
Yeah, sure, of course. I just don't know if that's a competitive bid. And I honestly mean, I have no idea
Right.
if that's competitive. I have zero problem relinquishing the naming rights. And if it inures to the benefit of the college, that's great, right? Because that gives them some needed funding. So I would just like to talk about it. Is there more funding available than what these guys are doing? And that would be my only concern.
So my comment on that is that I did reach out to the College of Central Florida and to Advent Health, and both of them are requesting this offer. I don't know if there were any other requests outside of that, but both of them are making that request.
Well, I'm sure Advent Health would, right?
Yeah, and the College of Central Florida.
Yeah,
also.
right.
So-
That's where the question would go. Did Jim think about something else? And it just might be naivete.
Right.
I have no clue.
I don't know. I don't know.
I have a question.
Yes.
So how did this thing come up, you know? I mean, it's out of the blue?
No, Advent Health and the college have been in discussion, and then they
The only reason
notified us.
is you put a lot of money into the nursing before.
Yes, we did.
I don't know how much we paid so far.
More than that. Yeah.
And on top of that, I think we still owe $2.3 million.
How much?
1.2.
1.2 so far for the
So then we
nursing
still owe
college.
them $2.3 million, I think is what we owe them, right? It's about 80.
We got total commitments outstanding, then of just shy of 4.8 million. I think that today we
No.
only requested 3.8, but 4.8 is the total commitment.
So I know there's some trying to make commitment, but we need some reprieve for all this being done so far.
Yes. So one of the discussions that I had with the College of Central Florida, we obviously, we invested a lot. Other organizations have invested a lot into this, and that we would definitely have recognition. But one of the benefits that I wanted to point out that I thought was significant. We were able to leverage the funding that we gave, the 1.4 million, to draw down record dollars from the state. This would be another leveraging of our dollars to draw down funding specifically for the College of Central Florida that they would not be privy to if it wasn't for our funding. So this would just be another leverage of our funding, that if they could get an additional $4 million for their program, it would be significant.
No.
No, it's unrelated. This is specifically just for naming.
Yeah, but the important.
The question is that we still have to pay this.
Without 100%, we still owe the money. But the point is, if we don't give them the naming rights, then the college doesn't get the $4 million.
Correct.
And are we interested in getting naming rights, or are we interested in getting the college $4 million?
And so how do we know that they will continue that year after year? So it's $1 million per year, right?
No, it's $4 million.
$4 million.
Flat out?
Yeah,
Okay.
for the naming rights.
I'm sorry.
20% of the value of the
Okay.
building.
You'll go into the down.
Okay.
Is it just a one-time payment or
Yes.
over a period of time?
It'd be a one-time payment, is my understanding. And we would put that into a MOU. I'm sorry.
Question, where the money went would matter to me, so I want to know that it's going for the nursing program.
My understanding is it would go towards the health and nursing, so kind of medical, nursing technology.
We can ask Rusty if he knows. You can use some.
Yeah, from a
It's
knowledge.
not-
The funds would be restricted to the nursing program there, or the health science programs.
Health science.
Yeah. And we could, condition the gift, or the naming, require that. But that's the intent of the college.
If we find somebody that offers more, do we just go with them?
Well, it's for sale, quite honestly. But I
I mean, we bring-
don't know if it's that easy either. If,
They're not interested at all, so that take care of it.
Unless the David Koch Foundation is something to worry about.
Hey, I do think it's important to state, like I said, this is a fact, that Advent Health approached the college. The college did not approach Advent Health. So that was all initiated by Advent Health.
I think that the fact that they, Gainesville is now with that hospital out in the northwest side of town, that this is sort of an impetus.
Yeah, let's make note, the hospital business today is a very competitive business.
So
Very competitive.
there's a new game in town there.
So one question, since we're just kind of finding out about this, should we have staff do a little homework to?
Harry, speak up on it.
No, you're not on.
Says it on.
All right, should we have staff do a better job, not better job, excuse me, more information as far as, should we make it a one-time deal, should it be a 10-year, should it be a 20-year, should it be, I mean, I watch these stadiums all over the country get named every 5 or 10 years, and you get shocked by the money. And so I'm not saying we're gonna get what Dallas Stadium gets or anything like that, but we should maximize, we're gonna do it for the college, and do it for the program, let's maximize it. If this is the best deal, then you'll be able to get that information, and we'll go for it.
It's an interesting idea.
I mean, if it's an established number, then I guess it was out there for anybody that wanted to be aggressive to go after it, so.
Yes.
I have no problem in voting to give up our rights in exchange for getting $4 million to the college. I just want to make sure we're doing our reach to maximize it.
We just want to make sure it's like $4 million and it's not a manipulation.
20% of the value of the building, and I'll get back on the exact amount. My understanding is somewhere between 3.5 and 4, whatever the final value was.
I would also like to see it as a single payment as opposed to spread over a 10-year period or 5-year period, so.
But you did say it's a single payment, right?
It's a single payment, it goes into an endowment.
I'll make a motion to approve this with the stipulation that it's a minimum of $3.5 million and that the cost of the building is audited to some extent so that they're paying the 20%?
Yes.
So we have a motion. We need
Can
a
I,
second.
I really don't want to discuss here, but I think it's important that we restrict the funds.
To add to your motion
To
to
add-
restrict the funds.
Restrict the funds to the health science.
Okay, yeah, you're absolutely, and I apologize, and the funds are, but restricted funds for the health science and nursing. Which in the, anything else.
Okay, so we have a first, have a minimum of 3.5 with the funds restricted to the health science.
And one payment.
And one payment.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
The discussion is that we're looking for a competition. Is that something we want to consider at this point?
Well, Rusty cleared it up by saying, here's the rules. Do you want to name a building? You give us 20% of the cost.
Yeah, but somebody else can offer us 6 million for the same rights.
They just haven't done it.
Yeah, that's the problem, that's the issue, is that no one's approached the college for that opportunity.
Well, don't you have an obligation at least look and see if that's feasible? I mean, the other party may say they're not interested, so that'll be it.
Well, who's that other party?
The only other party is HCA at this point. That's only the
We could ask the college to go ask HCA, do you want to name this building? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, that's a discussion. Will we have a second?
So, but your motion was not just to add it to it, it was just to pay the minimum of 3.5. So that would not preclude you from having the college.
You have to modify the motion.
I thought it was in relation to.
It was, it was admin.
Okay.
Motion, second, discussion, any other discussion?
Could you read the motion back again?
Yes.
To approve a one-time payment of a minimum of 3.5 million based on the accurate pricing of the 20% of the building for Admin Health to have the naming rights for that building in perpetuity.
Sorry, one thing here, good.
And that included just being used for
Health
health
science.
science.
Yes, the service.
So it's not stupid, but I assume the name would be Advent Health.
Yes. That could be the name.
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed?
I'm just held off, because I'm not sure, I think we should need to look at other competition. I mean, that's what we discussed. That's my word anyway.
We did until he brought up the point that a guy said, I have an asset for sale and it's $10, and somebody said, I'll pay you $10, and now we don't want to sell the asset for $10.
Yes.
I think we should, that's my.
Well, I mean, but again, the motion did not say Advent Health, it just said.
It said Advent Health.
It did
It
say
did
that.
say Advent Health.
See any value in Advent Health name being there? Is there, the relationship that the college has with Advent, is there something more to this than just the money?
I think it should be more interested in the community and the nursing college, because that's where we're interested, not Advent or HCA in particular. So I think any institution that wants it should get them as long as we benefit the nursing community. That's our purpose, actually.
Yeah.
We're not favoring one institution or the other.
Yeah.
So whatever gets the most money for the college is what we should vote on.
But we just voted.
I agree, so I refrain it, that makes a difference at this point.
So we've already voted and passed.
But, yeah, we've already passed.
Many of our board members are leaders in the local business community and serve on so many other great boards throughout the community and devote so much of their time and energy to that. We've been asked to provide an overview of when board members are prohibited from voting on certain items due to conflicts of interest. And really, in short, the rule is that a conflict of interest exists where a board member must abstain from voting in situations where the board member has a personal or financial interest that could influence their impartiality. Now, because of the fiduciary duty associated with serving as a board member on a board of trustees, that extends beyond any personal or financial interest that you as an individual may have. It goes so far as other boards that you may sit on or other businesses in which you're a principal. And so I put together a list of some common examples. I'll just run through them really quickly. First is if the vote would cause you personal gain or loss different from that of the community. And the same rule applies if the vote would cause a relative of yours personal gain or loss different from the community. And just so we know what relatives defined as, that means father, mother, son, daughter, husband, wife, brother, sister, father-in-law, mother-in-law, son-in-law, and daughter-in-law. So essentially, 1 degree of separation is a good, easy way to remember it. Another example is a business in which the trustee is a principal. If they benefit or have some loss as a result of the vote. Or another good example is another board that the trustee may sit on if that board and that organization suffers a benefit or a loss. And a good example, just to bring it full circle, is Rusty's abstention to the vote on the College of Central Florida. It doesn't mean that Rusty did anything wrong, just that he had a conflict of interest and abstained from that vote. And to tie it into our previous meeting, when Mr. Bianculli and Mr. Vanderden abstained from the vote on Gooding and Batz's retention, I just wanted to clarify for the record too, there was no conflict of interest present, but out of an abundance of caution in the heat of the moment, I believe it was the right decision. Now the reason for that is that while both Mr. Vanderden and Mr. Bianculli may be clients of our law firm, they don't receive any benefit from retaining us. Now, if a trustee were to go to law school and obtain some percentage share in Gooding and Batzel, they then would be precluded from voting on retention. But because there's no benefit conferred to Mr. Vanderden and Mr. Bianculli, no conflict of interest exists there. But really, I think, like I said earlier, the key is to be mindful of situations where conflict may exist. And if you can, I'll give all of the trustees who would like it my cell phone number after the meeting if you'd like to reach out to me if you ever have any questions. I'm happy to do so. And we can talk through, as soon as you realize there may be a vote on an issue where you may have a conflict of interest, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. We'll work through it with you and make sure we come to the correct legal decision. And just like Rusty did earlier, when there is a conflict, it's very important to state it on the record first, and then disclose by filling out, there's a form, I think it's called 8B, that staff will provide you when you have that conflict of interest. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So one question.
Welcome to the microphone.
During the conversation, if you just got to abstain from the vote, but you can participate in the conversation?
Yes, okay. But you have to say that you are conflicted before you advocate one way or the other, participate in the discussion.
Better err on the side of...
Correct. It's always better to err on the side of potentially a conflict than not a conflict. But that also kind of goes back to my earlier point. The earlier we can identify a time where there may be a conflict of interest and suss out the issues, the better. And like I said, there's never a dumb question. If you ever feel like, hey, this feels like I may or may not have one, if you're ever on the fence, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Rob Batzel.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And moving on to the next topic, a Stark Law violation update. Just as a reminder, at our last meeting we talked about how the hospital provided some professional courtesy credits to non-employed medical staff positions, which is a violation of the Stark Law. So in the interim, I've gotten some answers to the trustees, which the first of which you may have been wondering, like I was, why a Stark Law violation that was submitted in 2016 has only recently become active. And the reason for that is the Center for Medicaid Services essentially queues them up, and they are severely understaffed, so these self-reports sit there for years and years at a time, and it's not uncommon. Ours has actually moved quicker than some of them, which last over a decade. I've been in communication with Deborah Cooper, who's an attorney for interim counsel for CHS, as part of our ongoing issues to gather some documentation. And I'm sorry, not dead. I looked right there when I said as part of our continued efforts to gather documentation related to whether or not there's liability, and I've gotten some documents that I do think are very important for the trustees to take into consideration. And the first is that there is a the hospital had a written policy that said they will only provide this credit to non-employed physicians. So there is a written policy out there that says we will not provide this to employed physicians, it's only going to non-employed physicians. The disclosure prior to its being submitted to CMS was submitted to what's been represented to me as counsel for the district at the time. I just learned this on Friday. I've not been able to get in touch with them and confirm this yet, but Linda Fleming and Jen Kennedy out of Carlton Fields in Tampa, and I have seen the emails where they acknowledge receipt of these documents. Robert Moore, who was the CEO of Monroe at the time the self-disclosure was sent in, he submitted a certification stating that everything was true and accurate in that certification. And Eric LaChance, who was the chief financial officer of Monroe Regional at the time, also submitted a similar document certifying that everything that was contained therein was true and accurate. Really, at this time, our office is satisfied the Stark Law claim has merit. And there's another important legal consideration for us to think about, and that is when you submit a Stark Law self-report, like we did, you are certifying that everything in it is true and accurate.
We did not submit.
Yes, that's an important distinction too, but when it is submitted, you are certifying that everything contained therein is true and accurate.
There's no question on the culpability, right? The discussion was whether or not what the settlement should be.
Right, and so that brings me to my next point. We really do recommend the board undertake a motion to allow Mr. Rowan to retain Mr. Teplitsky and pursue a settlement. And before any settlement's undertaken, the trustees will have an opportunity to review and approve that settlement before it's actually determined what the amount is. And this is a highly, and I can't stress this enough, this is a very, very specialized niche area of the law. There are maybe 25 to 50 attorneys in the country based on our estimate that actually do this kind of work. And I think the trustees are best served by Mr. Teplitsky being retained. It's also important to remember CHS is going to be paying legal bills for Mr. Teplitsky throughout the duration of this settlement. So if there's any questions.
Do you have an idea what the settlement might be?
Yes, it's been told to us that, so it's out of the maximum exposure is $2.2 million, and the settlement is estimated to be somewhere between $75,000 and $150,000. And that's been represented to us by Mr. Teplitsky. He's an expert in the area of the law. He obviously can't guarantee results, but based on his experience and training and past similar claims, that's about the range he expects it to fall in.
Based on the prior settlements.
Right. So are we looking for a motion here to engage Mr. Teplitsky?
I think that's where we left off
I think
last
so.
time.
Yeah.
Do we take action on that, or do we just discuss it?
We asked for this.
Yeah,
okay.
Told us.
So do we have a motion? I'll make a motion to engage the law firm, as we mentioned.
All right, so we have a first, we need a second.
I'd second that one.
We have a second. Any discussions? Okay. All right, all in favor?
It's on there, it's only one word, I'm sorry. I was just reading it.
So there's a couple things I'd like to talk about. So we have these 5 pillars that we have now, and I think we might want to reevaluate them and maybe move them around a little bit. So we have diabetes as a unique one, we have obesity as a unique one, tobacco cessation, or however we want to look at that, mental health, and dental. So we've kind of put mental health and substance use disorder under the same umbrella. And I'm not, and I think diabetes and obesity are so correlated that they might be able to be enjoined together. And I think homelessness needs to be one of these. Now, whether that sits under mental health, whether that sits under substance use disorder, I'm not sure where it needs to sit, but I think homelessness needs to sit somewhere for a lot of reasons. One is when you look around the country, the way municipalities and counties are handling homelessness is a tragedy to not only the homeless themselves, but to the communities that they're participating in. So I think it would be good for the community, good for us, good for the health of the community to think about naming homelessness as one of those.
So if we were to do that, would that take resources that we're currently allocating to other programs in our existing pillars and reallocate those to homeless? I mean, What's the financial impact?
I understand that.
Yeah.
So what it wouldn't do, well, we do whatever we wanted to do, of course, right? But so the idea is, I don't think we would reduce any spending in anything that we've already been doing. And if some things time out, because we have a lot of things on a time, right? But I think new funding then would be allocated to the homeless side. And there's a new bill that just got signed by the governor that gets enacted, I want to say in September, I'm not sure. And that bill says that if you do not have the shelters for your count of homeless in the county, then you have three options. You can either get the shelters for those homeless, you can build a camp for them, and in that camp you need to provide security, wraparound services, mental health, or you can declare basically it's a budgetary crisis and you can't possibly afford that. That one I would think is a hurdle that's almost impossible to reach. So then we would be down to building a camp or increasing shelters. Building a camp gets very expensive. There's the old domestic violence shelter that has 60 beds in it. Those 60 beds, as far as I understand, would put us over the count for the number of shelters we need to satisfy the legislation for not having to build a camp, but providing enough shelter for the count for the homeless. That building is for sale, and that building is under contract with me and Kenny Kirkpatrick, strictly to turn it over to somebody else at no dollars being passed, just like I did with Beacon Point. It's $625,000. To replicate that facility for 60 beds would be in the millions. It's got the zoning, it's got the beds, it's got everything we need. Now, I don't think we should be paying for that, but I think we probably would want to participate in it. So we've generally participated on the asset side, and we generally stay away from the operations side because of the continuity of that and how it keeps going. So maybe we can participate on the asset purchase side. And there's, according to James, who's in charge of the homeless for the city, he says there's a bunch of money out there that the feds are giving, and maybe PCF is giving, LSF is giving on the operational side. The only reason I'm bringing that up is I got 75 days from March the 14th to take the building or walk away from the building. And I'm not going to buy the building unless I'm going to assign the building to either the county, the city, SMA, I don't know who's going to buy it. But I just felt like that was an opportunity I really don't think we should let go because of how much we considering that law was just signed.
What is the county's obligation on this thing? I mean,
We do not have an obligation at all.
No,
Until this law now goes into effect. I hope I'm talking loud enough for them to hear, but we've not had an obligation previously. The county has not had an obligation previously until this law goes into effect. And I'm not sure how it's going to impact us. I mean, we are building an engagement center that is going to offer some of those wraparound services, but it's that bed count that I don't know. So, Rich, it sounds like you already have done that investigation to know.
Yeah, I got the bill here. I mean, so the way they did it, which was very pro-business, the businesses have the right to sue the county. If the county's not providing the services, the county's supposed to provide them, and then the homeless impact their business.
But the county at this point has never had an obligation to provide
They do
for
now.
the homeless
They do now.
until this law has gone into effect.
Exactly, like
That's
that.
what I'm saying.
Sure, yeah, so there's no, I don't think anybody's saying the county has been at fault for not doing it, but I'm saying the county and the municipalities are into, the state has said, as far as I understand the bill, Michelle, and I'm not an attorney, that they now have to provide enough shelter, or they have to provide these camps, which I think is a horrible idea.
I just don't know how in the world a county or a city is gonna run that. We're not.
No, yeah,
So
I
you
don't,
have to get
I
somebody
don't,
in there.
just, that's right. So I don't think the task for the county or the city or us is to run a facility. There's professionals that do that, and that's just a dollar figure on who's SMA, I'm not even sure what they want to do. But there's a bunch of facilities there's a bunch of people that's what they do. And I don't think the county should have any part of that, in my opinion also. I don't think that's what you should do.
Is there any funding allocated by the state for this? I mean,
There's
we share it all.
various pots of money that come in, and it all flows through the state from the federal government, yes. So none of our local taxpayer dollars have gone into funding for the homeless. It is all dollars that are grant funding that comes down from those two areas. And we are an entitled community, so we do get those monies. And to Rich's point, there are dollars out there, we just need service providers to do that.
And that's where I think we can help, honestly, because these guys over here, that's what they know. So they can corral the people and engage those people, not pay them, but corral them and organize them, get them to be able to provide those services. At least he's looking at me with thoughts.
How big is the problem in our county? I mean, not San Francisco.
No, it's not.
There is a need, there is a need.
First thing we need is tents on the streets, right?
Yeah, there is a need.
So,
But that, to the point of what that law does is making sure that we don't end up like those communities that you just named. So there will be no public sleeping in our community as a result of that. So again, it's a way to enforce safety for families. And we certainly want our community to be a safe place where families matter. And so I'm sure we're going to find a way to accommodate the need. The next issue is getting people to accept that offer as well, because some people do not want to go to a shelter. So it's a long process to build the relationship for them to trust you, especially when there is mental health issues involved.
And is there a process in place that other counties don't hijack this process so that they come from another county, settle down here, because there's 16 bed.
Yeah, so there's that urban myth, really, that, you
You'll
know,
need to talk.
there's that urban myth that if you build it, they'll come. And I gotta tell you, I have found zero empirical evidence that that's true at all. I mean, none. I spent 3 or 4 days in Austin, Texas, where they have this, it's supposed to be state-of-the-art one, and their homeless count, including the people in that village of theirs, has not increased. So, the definition of homeless, it's really called chronic homeless. So the definition of that is it has to be over a year. They have to have a mental or physical disability. This is not a baseball field in Nebraska, or whatever that movie was. They're not living on here.
Well,
I have a question. So it's one thing you house them, you put them in some place where they're going to be sheltered for the night.
Not the night.
Okay? So they're sheltered. What else are you going to be able to find? Because if they don't have a home, they don't have food, they don't have money, they don't have...
Yeah, that's right. So the facility that we're talking about has a kitchen, has laundry services, has plenty of offices for peer counseling, for Medicare, Medicaid, for wraparound services, for mental health services. All of that stuff needs to be provided there.
I think it's a wonderful idea, and I think from what I see when I drive around here, there's a lot of people I see that can use it. I've seen the police actually come and take them out from underneath the bridge and get them to move on. But I'm quite an undertaker.
Go right ahead.
one of the things I would say, Rich, is I think where you started was this is a building that's already zoned and is set up for it. Because most people are gonna say, no, thank you, not in my backyard.
Right.
And if you have to go through a zoning of a piece of property, you're gonna have other people come out and say, I do not want that in my backyard. So I applaud you for stepping in, you, Mr. Kirkpatrick, to say, you know what, we can provide a resource and help our community. So thank you for doing that. And somehow now we're gonna have to navigate, how do we comply with the law to make sure that those services are offered?
Right, we just need to engage the right professionals on the management of it, like they did with the domestic violence shelter. Look how that turned out. I mean, CASA is amazing, right?
The worst thing that we have in the continuum of care, which that is the umbrella for all of these nonprofits that offer services to the homeless, none of our nonprofits offer for, it's called a low barrier shelter, and that is for your pedophiles, your people who are going to stay on drugs and continue to break the law. All of our shelters today require them to do something to stay there, that they don't break the law anymore, and there's no place, I don't know where.
Yeah, well, with a correction on that, on the low barrier, there are still certain restrictions. For instance, pedophiles would not be allowed.
We'll go with,
Just so you know.
okay.
You know, there's no barrier, which we don't need to be participating in. Then there's low barrier, which is what we're talking about, and that means they could be still having fairly significant issues, but they're trying. And then it's high barrier, or like Salvation Army, for instance, right? So that is the problem. There is no low barrier shelters here, and that's just my idea. I say we, I don't know who we is. We ain't me, you know. So whoever that is that would be running it, you know. But here's what the little bit I do know is this: we're going to have to deal with this. We have a pretty economical solution on the asset side of it, not on the people side of it. We can let that go, or we can try to buy that building, you know. And then the other thing on that was I was going to engage the hospital district to invest in increasing the robustness of the dashboard that we have to be able to enhance the continuum of care the way we see it, where we have people that are connected through that dashboard so that you can go on that dashboard and you can see, okay, I have this person and this is what the person's problem is and this is what comes out. Because the continuum care is a great idea. I'm not so sure how the practicality of how that is working, honestly. And I think the IT system that these guys have set up here, and it's fairly robust, that they may be able to, so that would be part of this whole homeless gig, is we increase the availability of understanding how to efficiently engage the local providers to give these people the services that they need.
And mental health.
I'm just trying to figure out, I think your ask was,
I guess.
okay, so we need to talk about.
That's the part, yes.
Okay.
Bring the conversation back to the belongs.
Yeah, and then we, okay.
So my question is now, so as funding is concerned, so we, assuming we buy this building for 675, I agree. So what's the ongoing expenditure and our role in this process?
I don't know, but here's what I think. We would have nothing to do with the operating expenses on that.
Yeah, so we have a building with 60 beds and that's it?
We have a campus with 7 buildings over on Martin Luther King. And there's all sorts of services being provided there, right?
Yeah, I'm just afraid there's expenses considerable besides just a building up there. So.
Well, yeah, but they've done a good job that when they take on the providers at Beacon Point, at least the idea is that we'll get you running and then you'll have to figure out your funding to go in perpetuity. Is that not in our theory?
For some, yeah, that's not our theory. For some of the services, we can pay.
If we can't get the funding from LSF or whoever, then we can't do it. We can't, because I'm going to tell you, that operating expense is going to be about $2.2 million. But here's the thing that is very hard for the politicians to explain to their people voting for them. A homeless person costs the county about $35,000 or $40,000 a year. That's what it actually costs them, and it costs them that in hard dollars. Nobody sees it because it's the cop that's picking him up. It's the hospital that's taking the emergency call. So it's like we have a really junky piece of equipment and we're fixing it every month, and we're spending $500 a month fixing the piece of equipment when we could pay $400 a month to get a brand new piece of equipment, but now we have to own up to the fact that we just bought a brand new piece of equipment. And that's what's going on with the homeless. They are costing us more money or at least the same being that way than it would being this way. And because we don't see it coming out of a direct pocket, it's very easy for us to think it's really not happening. And the choice is they can live like that for $35,000 or $40,000, or they can live like this for $35,000 or $40,000 with a chance of getting their life back in order and getting themselves into a healthy American way of life for the same amount of money. The only thing is one guy stroking a check instead of 16 different people, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, disability, the police force, the jail, the hospitals. They're all paying that $35,000.
Yeah, I like the idea, I guess, I just want to make certain that our organization, if we get involved, has the capacity to do it, and then also whatever resources we need. But you envision if we do this, Rich, would be that we would be just an asset holder?
I didn't know if we'd be the asset holder, honestly. I'm saying we would be a collaborator.
Oh, yeah, okay, perfect, yeah, gotcha. Yeah, but we would not be leading the charge, but we would be right behind.
Helping them.
Assuming you don't have this plan, what's the county's plan for this one?
The county does have a plan. There is a 5-year plan. It's not like those services aren't being offered today. It's now there is this law that's put in place that I don't understand all the law yet.
When does it go into place? I'm sorry to interrupt.
It's either September 1st.
Yeah.
Of this year.
Of this
Okay,
year.
all right, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, I mean, there is some yet to understand what the law and the intent of the law is. I think the intent of the law is to make sure that those services are happening. The services are happening as long as you have a provider to offer those services. And there is a lot of money that is in and they get allocated, but there are restrictions on how those dollars can be used. So again, there is money there, and as long as people apply to it to offer that service, they're typically offered. And it runs through the continuum of care. There's a rank and review group. So however this board of trustees decides to vote, I still think there is opportunity to engage yourself in the continuum of care and to step into that role of helping be professionals, because again, the continuum of care could use some really good people to sit and be members and sit at that table and helping make those decisions. I don't know if I've answered your question, Dr. Ron, well enough.
I'm fine.
When did you say you had until to make this decision about the building?
May 28th.
We have 75 days from March the 14th.
75 days.
So we determined we will not have sufficient beds open in the homeless shelters that we already have?
That's good. And I'm not saying we buy the building, I'm just saying, what I'm asking for is let's get the city and the county and us sitting at a table and saying, how can we make this happen? It's really all I'm saying.
How about two different motions? One to have a workshop to talk about our pillars and see if we want to expand them and that homeless with the workshop.
This is a part of the mental health, we can just put it in.
Well, for now, yeah, that's fine, but our pillars have been in place for 10 years. We've got a 10-year reunion. It's a good time to look at them and make sure we're where we want to be. It's hard to do it here, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So we could
This is a little bit of
That's good information, thanks, Rich.
So we could create a workshop for that, and then, in the meantime, because your timetable on 60 days, or 65 days, we could make a motion to ask staff to look into available dollars for purchase of a facility.
Or sit down with the county and the city, right?
Yeah, and to find a group that would run the facility and see what dollars are available to do that.
Is that reasonable to do that?
But that would at least keep us moving in the time instead of losing another month.
Michelle, did you have something you want to add?
There is a bid process, it goes out for a bid, or a group has to step in and apply. So, I mean, if somebody would have to step in and apply for those dollars. It doesn't just get awarded and then it's through a rank and review committee on that continuum of care. So there is a process that, it's a governmental process in place that we cannot
Well,
supersede.
there's two different buckets of money, I thought, Michelle, and again, I could be really wrong, you know, I just throw stuff out there, but I thought that there's, the two buckets are, one bucket is the operational dollars, and the other bucket is the $625 to close it. And I was thinking on the $625 to close it, there may be some CDBG money, there may be some city money, and there may be some hospital district money. And then that doesn't go through a continuum of care, there's no ranking or anything, that's a discussion.
There is no county money except through that process though, Rich.
Well, CDBG money, no.
Is through the continuum of care, the CDBG, the community services. And I do have a message from Cheryl Martin, who is our community services director. Just, you know, do we have sufficient beds for homeless based on the new law? She says she's working to figure that out. She had a meeting last week with the city and she's waiting on the city to answer
They're
that.
short 52, I can answer for you.
She's not sure that that bill affects us. So there must be some caveats in that bill based on the size of the community.
And the number of homes,
Yeah, well, there was a count.
225.
Yeah, I mean,
So
with all due
there's
respect to
still-
Cheryl Martin, we had this conversation, I was at the table with her last week, so
Okay.
I'm quite sure.
Okay, so,
But that's okay too, I don't have a, I don't know.
I know you're on a timeline, I'm just trying to answer, there is a process to get the money from the county. The city does have some money too, because they do get dollars based on population. We get dollars based on population, but again, there's a process on how we get it out. We can't turn you an answer in 45 days like you're asking.
Well, then we don't get the building and you guys have a bigger problem.
That could very well be the case.
That would be silly.
I'm sorry, I hope you'll move forward knowing that you can maybe turn it to something else. But again, there is a process, I can't break the law to get the dollars.
I don't think anybody's asking anybody to break any rules.
so Harvey made a comment that he'd like to make two separate motions.
Well, if you, I don't know, do we need a motion for a workshop? I mean, do we need that? or-
No, you just scheduled that.
Yeah, so yeah, I'll make a motion that we ask staff to look into the dollars available and to purchase the building and also to find a group to help run the facility and see if those dollars are available. And we got
That's
some
not a motion,
motions.
that's just a request.
Yeah, we can do that.
So that's just a request.
We can do that.
Okay, we don't need a motion.
We just want to get everybody on board, at least.
Any request?
Okay, does everyone have any other comments or concerns or questions to add to that?
We do have a timeline based on the contract, so we need to come back and make a decision at some point, for sure. At least the next meeting, we should have a decision made.
Correct.
We'll work on that, we'll work on our timeline.
Okay,
Oh,
go ahead.
Just one more thing, I mean, at the end of the day, if we can get somewhere in the next 60 days, then, I mean, we're, on one of the other boards I'm on, we're in the process of just remodeling the building. It's gonna cost $600 for 16 beds, so 60 beds for 600,000. And I'm sure there'll be some more money spent, but that's a really good deal.
In what shape or form is this building?
It's not in bad shape, I mean, we had the fire marshal go through, and he said you gotta get a couple of fire extinguishers here, you gotta get a panic button over there, and if you're gonna put in a kitchen, the answer system on the hood needs to be redone.
Do you fund all that?
There's nothing there, that's, I don't wanna say nothing, that would be true, but, I mean, it's
Right.
$25,000.
Kirk, do you have something else you want to add?
So, you know, we have been working with, Deborah and I have been working with the city and the county on how to draw down maximum dollars for the continuum of care. And one of the things that is a big problem for us that we think we can help right off the bat is we have several partners that we fund that work with uninsured, underinsured citizens. A lot are homeless, particularly at Beacon Point, SMA, and the federally qualified health centers. One of the big issues that we have in this county is that there is a software system that's required that's called coordinated entry into the homelessness realm. And so a lot of the partners are not entering the data in. Some of it is because it does require a lot of data entry and you have to pay for a position that may or may not exist into a separate database. So one of the things that we've evaluated is, can we help the hospital district with an interface with an existing database like we did with SMA and the federally qualified health centers, where it will extract data from their existing databases to make it so we can pull the data in. The reason why it's so important is that if we don't have the data in coordinated entry, where it's required to be, we cannot pull down the dollars, because all the data is basically extracted about the number of people that we serve for our community out of coordinated entry, that software. It doesn't matter if it's in ours or anyone else's, it has to be in this particular database. So we're working on that because we're probably losing, I'm just estimating, about 25% of the homeless dollars available to Marion County just because our partners aren't entering the data. And I don't want to say it's a fault issue, I see it more as a, you know, it's staffing.
What's the roadblock for getting those in place, for having this money?
Staff.
Staff.
We enter the data in.
So staff is one, but the other one is the data may not match exactly. So we're working with the organization that developed the coordinated entry database to see if we can find a solution that we create a common extract file, that we can work with all of our partners to say, if you already entered the data, we will work with you to extract the data, so you only have to do it once. And then we can draw down maximum dollars. So that, just an FYI, that's something that we're doing for operational dollars.
Okay.
How expensive is this?
Don't hurry it. We're working on that. Don't hurry it.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the next one.
Deborah, you want to take the first one?
Yes.
Sexual assault recovery building?
So, as you know, the hospital district has been heavily involved in the domestic violence situation in our community. But while that was going on, there was also an issue with sexual assault and recovery. So sexual assault, somebody is sexually assaulted, Creative Services ran that program as well. They were a duly certified shelter, meaning that they did domestic violence services, as well as if somebody's sexually assaulted, the forensic interview, they're supposed to be doing advocacy, counseling, that type of thing for a person that has been sexually assaulted. Approximately, there's about, since in July or in June, that was the first thing that Creative Services stopped providing because they lost their certification with sexual assault and recovery services. An organization out of Lake and Sumter counties stepped into the fold and took over those services. So people were really focused on domestic violence because there wasn't a service provider providing that service in this community, whereas the Haven out of Lake Sumter came in and kind of like took over those services. Well, currently they've been operating out of the Bellevue Department of Health, and it's not the most conducive place to have sexual assault, forensic interviews, or talking to victims of sexual assault, or anything of that nature. They are, the Haven House, they help Marion County set up a nonprofit organization called the Marion County Sexual Assault and Recovery Incorporation. Cheryl Goddard, one of our former trustees, has been helping them with their finances, and she's come to our community and helped them out with that, and she's going to do that until they get more up and running and on their feet. What they are currently looking for is a more permanent location, a location where they can offer a more robust service array. And in March, we reconfigured the buildings at Beacon Point. So our old facility, the Octagon building, it's being currently occupied by our peer recovery specialists. So those peer recovery specialists that are available 24/7, help people walk through their journey of becoming sober, respond to the hospitals, first responders, families, whatever. they are operating out of that building. However, when we reconfigured the buildings at Beacon Point to make it more organized, we have space available for them to relocate back to Beacon Point if possible. What we would like to present to the board is that give the Marion County, without giving them money, because it's not necessarily into one of our pillars, but Marion County Sexual Assault and Recovery, the opportunity to lease our facility. They would pay all the utilities and things to maintain the building. It would also provide us, we would enter them into our mindshare system like we do every other grantee, and we would get data from them, because there is a huge correlation between people that have been sexually assaulted with substance abuse and mental health. So the statistics are they're 13 times more likely to misuse substances or with alcohol, and 26% times more likely to misuse other illicit drugs. So we're asking that you consider allowing our SMA staff to move back to Beacon Point and allow Marion County, the new Marion County Sexual Assault and Recovery, to take over.
So that would be better situated within our county, more
Better
centrally
situated, and
right next to the
actually used to
hospital.
be a doctor's office.
Right.
And the lease is for free, pretty much.
The lease would be for
They just
free.
have the upkeep and the electricity and,
1 year
And the
lease.
dignity too, right? They have the
Yes,
dignity of not
yes.
being.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I move to accept this recommendation by staff to make the necessary changes if they become.
we have a motion, we have a second.
I'll second.
Second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I have a quick question with that.
Yes.
Now the one that just flipped into my head. We're taking over that where the fire rescue people are we not? Didn't we swap out our land by the railroad tracks for the land in town? That has a building and things on it. Can we start looking at something like that with utilization for future? Am I?
No, I asked the same question.
Okay.
The answer's no.
So when we provided the lease to Advent Health, they retained the rights to the prior facility, and then when we swapped the land, Advent Health has the right to that facility, so they have planned use for it.
Okay, next item on the agenda.
So, just an update. Yeah, it's a good update. Good way to end the meeting.
Yeah.
First thing I want to say is about 3 weeks ago, I had COVID, and it knocked me out. And Deborah and staff really did a great job of picking up for me because
They picked up the COVID?
No.
I stayed away as best I could.
It is not
No,
super spread.
no, my oxygen levels, I have not been able
It's
to.
still not great, man.
No, they're not. I have not been able to get it above 90, and I've had treatments for a while, and the staff has done an incredible job of, filling in the meetings for me, and I appreciate it. But one really good thing that came about over the last few weeks was, we worked on domestic violence from the get-go. When we found out that creative services was starting to falter, and really the team of individuals that came in to make a change in who provided domestic violence services, Deborah and I just had lots of contacts in the background. And so we started working with the Deputy Secretary of DCF, trying to find out, how do things work? How does funding flow here? And we found out there's very little money for Marion County. So that was the first thing. To find a new service provider, one, we had to find someone that was exceptional to bring into Marion County. And that's something that we worked on. But the other thing was, how do we draw down more dollars? So DCF was very responsive. They listened. There was not a lot of money in domestic violence service across the state. But DCF worked very hard. They were able to increase the operational dollars slightly. But once we met with the new service provider, Casa Pinellas, we met with their CEO, they said, really, it's going to take at least another $1 million to provide a full range of services in Marion County. And so that's where Deborah and I, really worked on it, and we put out 2 appropriations, one through Dennis Baxley and one through Representative McLean, and both of them came through for us. We wrote for $1 million for operations for domestic violence.
Recurring?
1 year.
1 year.
Hopefully, it'd be great, but I'll just say 1 year. And then $1 million for the acquisition or renovation of a domestic violence facility. I know Cheryl Martin has been working very hard on finding a location, and but it won't be enough for all that's needed for renovation. So we found out about a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago, that we were successful, that both of our requests for $1 million for both operations, and there were 2 different requests, $1 million for operations for domestic violence and $1 million for renovation and acquisitions was approved, and the only thing standing in the way is a potential veto. So we're working hard, crossing our fingers, and hoping that we are not vetoed on either of these bills. But if it comes through, we will have $2 million for Marion County. We will receive the funds. We did not, and one of the reasons why we were successful is there's no admin fees attached to it. So it will be flow through dollars. We will be responsible for it. We will have to monitor, according to probably the Department of Children and Families, will monitor the distribution of funds, and we'll be responsible for that, Deborah and I. However, it will go directly to domestic violence service providers, probably Casa Pinellas primarily.
Casa Marion.
Casa Marion, thank you.
So it's Hunter's and Pastor?
Yes.
Nice job.
Great job.
Absolutely.
And thank you, thanks Stan and Dennis,
Yes, absolutely.
and the governor.
She's right.
Yes.
Okay, any old business? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
Everybody, Matt.